Well, look, we're going to be streaming at some point. So, Matt, what's been going on with you, dog?
Um, well, Weird Crap in Australia has been asked to be guests at the GammaCon convention here in Canberra.
Yeah,
So
I've
we're
been to one
going
of
to be
those.
getting ready for that.
How has been GammaCon been in the last few years? I haven't been since the last time we went together to do when we doing cosplay music videos and shit.
I mean, what's funny about it is I think it's like it's really grown and expanded. You know, when we first did it, it was in this small sort of convention hall in God, I think it was Woden, wasn't it, at the Hellenic Club? And
Yes.
now they went over to like Exhibition Park. They've used the AIS Arena. They've sort of gotten bigger and bigger, and I think every now and again they're actually managing to pull in some talented people. Like they get a pretty decent stable of Australian comic book artists. They also pull in voice actors every now and again and things like that. They're also like very involved in the streaming community as well, so they get some famous Twitch streamers, and they're now looking to expand into bringing in more podcasters and stuff like that. So that's where we come in. But we did our very first Weird Crap live show with those guys just as a testing ground a few years ago. So we're actually going to be doing two Weird Crap in Australia live shows, one on the Saturday and one on the Sunday. So
Cool.
that's going to be a chance for us to stretch our live legs a little bit more.
Yeah, nice. I remember the first time you tried to do a live show and you were freaking out about whether, anyone was going to be there or not. And the
Yeah,
the amount of
yeah.
joy that you expressed by just having people there, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I remember someone tapping me on the shoulder and saying, "Hey, Matt," and I was like, "Oh, well, this is a convention sort of scene, so I imagine it's one of my friends." And no, it was a listener. They'd come out to meet us, and they wanted to get a selfie. It was very flattering.
Yeah, nice. Better times.
Yeah,
All right, let's
different
uh let's
times.
let's start the show proper. We're low on time this week, so we'll try and get through
Yep.
things relatively quickly. The election stuff and the news haven't been all that um exciting, I think. With Albo being gone,
Yep.
like the media haven't really been doing much. They have been doing their attacks, generally speaking, on Labor being a team. It's been very strange. We caught the tail end of that, or like I guess the start of that when last week. But yeah, other than that, there's been no real major policy things. There's been like tiny little things here and there. Most of them are, I think, coalition basically going in, trying to get people to vote for them in their specific seats. And I don't think we covered this on the show, but there was a thing where Morrison was at like a place and he was like, "Yeah, we're going to give this place a bunch of money." And then like there was just journalists yelling at him about whether this was pork barreling or not. And then him basically just scurrying off and trying to get into a car very quickly.
Mm. And I mean that has essentially been Morrison's entire campaign strategy this week. It's been a matter of get him in front of an audience very, very quickly. Make sure that he can't have much involvement with anyone. Get him back into a car and then piss him off to the next speaking engagement. That is all it's been. You predicted, and you predicted correctly, Tommy, that the Morrison campaign wouldn't go on the attack against Albanese while he was off sick,
I
which
mean,
we pardon me, which we agreed at the time would probably be like that would have been the correct strategy to pull from the Liberal Party, to not actively go after someone who was sick. It would be seen as tactless. So he didn't do that, but
I mean, he still
he
sort of did it. He
also,
was all like, "Yo, why didn't I when I was sick, I had to do a press conference or some BS like that when he was prime minister."
yeah, I'm sure, yeah, there was probably some little slight there, here or there, but for the most part, it was relatively quiet. What was interesting, though, is that this was the chance for the Liberals to take a different tack. Seeing as how they wouldn't have a huge amount of competition around, what they could have done is more community outreach. They could have talked to people. They could have seen, actually been involved with their communities. The problem is with Scott Morrison is that they know that if he does interact with the community, you're going to have things happen that's going to be beyond their control, which usually means someone yelling at him, someone telling him to fuck off, which happened last week when a woman with a megaphone was basically just screaming it at him. Literally, she actually had a real working microphone. So, you know, the Liberal campaign is desperately afraid to actually put their leader out there. And if you can't put your leader out there, then you're going to have a really hard time reaching the voter. So they've sort of switched to what they refer to as like the cheap watch campaign method, which is spruik a bunch of incentives, don't take any questions, move on. You know, like a cheap salesman, you just got to hit your messaging and move.
Yeah.
Last week, they squandered a perfect opportunity to actually get Morrison out there in the community. And they're just, the Liberal campaign is just too afraid to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's not just Morrison, but like a lot of other people on his team. Like there's been reports of like Frydenberg not fronting up for like a local debate in his little community.
Yeah.
And it seems like, just from what I hear from the news and stuff, that his seat is under serious threat. Like that he might not actually win, and that him being like a treasurer not winning a seat is almost unheard of. Like it was like the last example was 90 years ago or something. So that is a big deal. One of the things I wanted to cover, because I don't think we have all that much to cover in terms of Frydenberg being missing. It's just a thing, and it's just an example of him being shit, basically.
Yeah. The basics of it were it was organized by people who were they were pro climate action, and he said, "Oh, I'm not going to show up," after promising he would, because he said it was biased, which we can point out the obvious bullshit there. If Albanese can front up to a Sky News debate, then surely Frydenberg could have shown up to a debate where they're going to be discussing climate change. So it just shows, once again, a weakness when it comes to the Liberal Party, willing to engage out of fear that they're going to be presented in a negative light, and then inadvertently being presented in a negative light because they don't have the courage to front up and have those hard discussions.
Yeah. We will probably get a little bit more into the debatey stuff later, because there was a question asked of Morrison about that kind of floored me. But we'll do that in a sec. I want to talk local stuff for now, because I found this very interesting. So, if I get the right camera, okay. So I got this in the mail. Okay, this is an attack ad against an independent candidate. So this guy is one of the he's funded by Climate 200 or whatever. He's an ex rugby player. I think he might have captained Australia, or something like that. But basically, they're labeling him as an extreme green. This comes from Advance Australia. And we'll look into these guys in a little bit in a second. But what I find interesting about that tactic is the Greens in Australia have had a massive swing to them against the other parties, right? In the ACT. So the ACT is the most progressive region in Australia. Its parliament locally has like 5 Greens MPs, right? They actually hold a decent amount of power within the government, and they form a minority government. They form essentially a coalition with Labor to run the ACT government, right? So why would you do an attack ad that labels an opponent as a Green in this jurisdiction, right? Isn't that just like getting people to vote for that candidate, right?
It is.
What's interesting about that is this guy is running in the Senate, and he's up against Zed Seselja, basically. It seems like literally everyone that's running in the Senate, except for maybe like the UAP and stuff like that, don't want Zed Seselja to be a senator. So, and if you look at it in that framework, it sort of makes sense that that a liberal aligned lobby group are basically attacking him for being a Green, because what they're primarily concerned about is that Senate seat and the votes that are needed to get it. Now, they know that they can't get any Greens voters to vote for them anyway. Those are just lost votes. So by making this guy seem like an extreme Green, they're basically telling their base not to vote for him, because he seems like an appealing candidate for the Liberal Party. So he's basically being set up to steal Liberal votes. which is why he is, the way he is and stuff like that. And I think in terms of like his issues and what he actually stands for, he's fairly progressive. Like he was very he was an advocate for the same-sex marriage stuff. But he presents himself because he's a rugby player and everything like that, and a white dude. He's primed to basically take liberal seats, liberal votes in this election. So I thought that was a very interesting thing about the election that's going on in the ACT. Basically, nothing else is all that interesting because the Labour Party basically have it down on lock. Like,
yep.
In the last election, like, their first preferences are down, but the Greens votes they'll get, and the 3 seats that they have in the Parliament are a margin of like the lowest margin is like 7%, and there's not much competition here. Like, there's no like big marketing spend or anything like that. The Liberals don't have very many good candidates. We have like Andrew Lee representing my seat of Fenner. So it probably should be the same way around this time around as well, I think, in terms of what's going to go down in the election. The only thing is whether or not Zed Selja gets back in, basically.
This is a very interesting thing, and it's kind of rare. So what you've got here in the ACT, you've got a bastion of Labor. It has always been Labor. It will always be Labor unless they do something catastrophically wrong. Generally speaking, Canberra is one of your most progressive voting blocks in the country. And the reason for that is it's quite affluent. It's got good education. It's very multicultural. So you have a mix of different voting demographics. And generally speaking, when the Labor government is in charge, it means that you have more bureaucrats in the public service. And, the Canberra economy is heavily reliant on the public service. So generally speaking, Labor always gets in based on those reasons. Progressivism, high education rates, affluent area, and a healthy, thriving public service. What's interesting about going after this candidate is that I think, number one, like Zed Selja has essentially been winning his seat back consecutively, almost just out of like default.
Yeah, it's basically just default.
Yeah, it's basically just default. So he kind of gets slotted in there. So it wasn't going to take much to bump him out because he is exceptionally loathed by the people of Canberra. He doesn't particularly do anything for his demographic. Most people, if you talk about him, don't particularly like him. And because he just sort of narrowly slots in there every single time, it just sort of just goes to show you how little support he has. Now, coming after this candidate in the way they have has been quite interesting because he is a former NRL player, what is that in Canberra? That's the Canberra Raiders.
It's rugby union.
Rugby union, sorry. It's really hard to go up against a celebrity or an athlete when it comes to elections anyway. Even in this country, like obviously Donald Trump is the prime example of this in recent memory. But even in this country, like you had like Peter Garrett making his way into the Senate. He is and was the singer of what was it?
Midnight Oil.
Midnight Oil. Yeah. And he was able to slot in there based on his popularity. We've also had like presenters from things like Play School. One of the Labor senators in Queensland, she was an ex-Play School host and she ran for, I think it was 10 consecutive years. So, when it comes to celebrity, it sort of bumps you up a little bit. And Canberra is also a big, big sporting town. So he's got that cult of personality. He's got the fame behind him. He's got name recognition. And he's coming up against someone who most of Canberra really doesn't like.
I think there's also like there's a fair amount of Liberals I've heard on the street that don't like Zed very much, but he's like the only senator with name recognition because he gets in by default and people just vote party line and then they'll just get him. That's just how that kind of goes down.
Yep, exactly.
It's not just that this little pamphlet here. There's also messing around with the core flutes, as they call them. And I actually
Yes.
haven't watched this video, so we may as well just give it a burl. I reckon see what's going down, because I think it's quite interesting to see how like something more mainstream would cover this. And I was kind of shocked that it got any coverage at all. But Advanced Australia, like as we'll see in a bit, they're pretty messed up. I wonder if they're going to cover them in this thing.
Only one of these core flutes is telling the truth, but both are perfectly legal.
In politics, they're exempt. The laws don't cover political parties and organisations and candidates.
David Pocock is
That's pretty
running for the
interesting.
Senate as an independent, though Conservative lobby group Advance Australia, which is standing by its messaging, would have you believe the former rugby player is part of the Greens.
We've had a number of calls from people asking if I was running for the Greens after seeing the Greens logo on my chest.
Oh, come on, that's ridiculous.
He's fighting back with memes and humour. That's because he knows his complaint to the Australian Electoral Commission will likely amount to nothing.
We need reform in this area so badly. There's so many loopholes in this area, in this space. And the major parties allow it to happen because they know there's loopholes there and claim that there's no laws in place.
Well, I support our current laws, which enable people to have a robust debate.
Labor, which
So
has...
fucking Zed Seselja, like I think he has two staffers or former staffers or something of his that basically are part of Advance Australia. So of course he's gonna fucking say that.
has also been targeted by Advance Australia, says the signs should be removed.
They have no place in a civilised democracy in which we ought to be battling
It's
based
my
on
boy right here.
ideas
This is the guy
and
I vote for.
values, rather than baseless fear campaigns.
Advance Australia isn't
He
the
lacks
only
some charisma, but he's
organisation
very
accused
smart.
of taking liberties with the truth, with funding group Climate 200, which backs David Pocock and ACT independent candidate Kim Rubenstein, reportedly promoting a doctored post featuring Senator Seselja. Meanwhile, the Greens are pushing to ban roadside core flutes altogether. However, not all voters agree.
I think it's okay that they're still around and still promoting their, I guess, face.
I don't think it really matters. I think we can see what it is.
Maybe they should be moderated.
I think they should be banned.
Australians deserve...
No changes will be made before May 21, and until then, it's likely the number of ads will only increase. Talia Roy, ABC News, Canberra.
Okay, so if you've been watching, if you're driving around Canberra at all, you'll probably notice that there's like the ratio of like David Pocock core flutes to like everyone else is like 4-1.
Yeah. Yep.
I think he's quite well funded in that space. So I think Zed Seselja, I have hope. Even though it's still sort of like given I guess just the sheer number of Liberal Party voters here. Like there's enough of them that they're probably still going to get Zed Seselja in, but I have hope that with all this extra spending, with like it's seemingly how desperate Advance Australia are to just get rid of this one candidate, that he marks a legitimate threat against Zed Seselja, and that we might actually get rid of the what do they call him, the a junior woodchuck. Penny Wong called him when he went down. So
look, they wouldn't be this scared if he didn't pose a significant threat to Seselja. And honestly, look, all of these Climate 200 candidates, and there are a substantial amount of them in this election, all of them have they have potential to strip away traditional Liberal Party voters. Which is great. I think it's a wonderful thing to see. Like the Liberal Party is going to be coming up against Climate 200, and Climate 200, I think for the most part won't preference the Liberal Party anyway, considering those are the votes that they're going after. They're going to be looking to tear the Liberal Party to absolute shreds, and I think that's great. Pocock is an example of this. They're putting someone into an area where they know they have a very good chance of winning. They know they can strip votes away from the Liberal Party. They know they can help remove some of their senators, and that's what they're going to do. I mean, maybe I'm being overly optimistic here, Tommy, but I think this election could very well be a bloodbath for the Liberal Party.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so, but we cannot deny the effect that the UAP are going to have and the way they preference things. And it might very well be that, because the UAP are liars, right? They're like, hey, we won't. We're going to preference Greens first. And then we've seen some stuff from the Chaser where they put some people undercover to go in there, and that is absolutely not the case. So their votes are probably going to flow straight to Liberal, and that might be enough for them to edge out and get Seselja back in. In the last election, he got 0.97. What do they call it? It's percent of the way to get the seat, right? So he relied on the preference laws to actually get him over the line. So that is the thing. I wanted to bring your attention to like who these Advance Australia guys are, not to be confused with. Wait, no, these aren't the guys. They're another group called Advance Australia, and they are advanceaustralia.com.au, and they're basically just a libertarian mob. So it's very interesting that they're like the first thing that I searched for was, and I got them instead of these guys. But they're all about like doing these polls and saying how they're like, and they all have all these stock photos. Like you can sort of just tell how completely disingenuous they are.
Mm.
And they say somewhere around here, like they have this thing where they're like, yeah, power up Australia. It's time to go nuclear. Right. And then down here, they have this news story that goes, Australia, power prices have spiked. We need new coal plants now. And it's like, dude, you can't even remain consistent on your own fucking front page.
Yep.
Like, what is your deal?
So, I mean, look, you're always going to have, even, the Labor Party has lobbying groups behind them as well. The equivalent to Advance Australia for the Labor Party is Get Up and Go, which is, that is part of the political game. If anyone,
I mean, I would disagree. There's been no ties. Like, it's the allegations that Get Up are. I mean, that's what. Well, hold on. That's what these guys say about Get Up. They're framing themselves as the anti-Get Up. They did that whole Get Up. Oh, they don't have a picture of it here. Yeah, this guy. This they created this Captain Get Up guy, but there's been no ties, and there's been like 3 different investigations into Get Up, and there's like almost no ties to the actual Labor Party proper. But if you go into look at the Advance Australia guys, there are tons of ties to them and the Liberal Party. Right? So like the comparisons aren't, they're not comparable, the two organizations, except for like one will align generally more with Labor. But like if Labor do some shit policies that go against Get Up will attack them. But they're just anti-Liberal at the moment because the Liberal Party are the ones in power doing stupid shit.
Yeah, but what I mean to say is that in general, you do have a vast amount of like privatized lobbying groups, and that's what I mean when I make that comparison. One thing that's like just to explain what a libertarian is as well for people, you see that more in America than Australia. But what a libertarian is, I like to compare them to a cat. Okay, cats are fiercely independent and are completely ignorant to the structure around them that supports their lives. And that is pretty much what a libertarian is.
Yeah,
they're
they hate
fiercely
taxes.
Independent. Yeah, they're fiercely independent people, but they still rely on public healthcare, public education, Medicare. And if you took that away from them, they would be up in arms. So they love those, they love the benefits of a structured society while also saying we don't need a structured society. Advance Australia isn't really a libertarian organization in the truest sense of the word anyway. They are conservatives pretending to be free speech advocates, which is what we're now seeing all across the world now, is these people, suggesting that they're not conservative, they are free speech advocates.
Yeah, so this is the website, advance-australia.com.au. This was the first thing that I found when I was searching for Advance Australia. And like, these guys are clearly not the same. They're clearly not AstroTurf. These are just like people who made a website talking about how they don't like laws and that they don't like taxes and they want to change electoral reform and taxation reform and stuff like that. And they want electronic voting built off of the blockchain, because of course. That's these guys, right?
We want unregular. Oh, there's Ronnie Reagan there as well.
Yep.
The libertarian golden boy, good old Ronald Reagan. One of the worst things that happened to America was Ronald Reagan, who systematically just knocked out safeguard after safeguard after safeguard. America before Ronald Reagan, they actually had to have there were standards and practices when it came to news organizations. If you were going to present a politically charged story, you were required by American law to also present the counter argument to that story. So if you had if you were covering a Republican and what they were doing, then you had to cover a Democrat. The Ronald Reagan administration, they came in, they knocked that down. The reason for that is because he was friends with the founder of Fox News. As soon as that happened, that's where Fox News came in and started helping to spread misinformation. They also did another fun thing, which was removing standards and practices from children's programming. You weren't allowed to directly market to children. And because of that, cartoon shows like He-Man, G.I. Joe came into existence. And He-Man was such an effective advertising cartoon for the toy line that they didn't even charge stations to broadcast He-Man because the toy sales more than made up for the deficit of letting the program be shown for free. And that all came about because of the Ronald Reagan administration. They were very much anti-regulation, removing all of these safeguards that have been put in place for many, many decades. And that's why the libertarians hold him up to be like their golden child, their poster boy, because of things like that.
So anyway, that's the we weren't talking about them. I just found that interesting that Advance Australia has such ties to, well, like, is so closely like searchable with those other people.
The links to their political allies or even backers, if you want to go so far, is quite evident.
Yeah, but one other nitpicky thing that I'll bring up as a sign of them being really goddamn lazy is that, okay, so they've got this bit where they have David Pocock, and then they have the stuff that he's about, that he said or whatever, right? And then because they're lazy shitbags, they have that same colon here. As if there's meant to be something at the bottom that he's saying, but all the stuff that he's meant to be saying is like in the background above it. And they're just pictures, right? Like this one, this thing should not have this colon here. It should just be, yeah, David Pocock, this is what this guy is. But they're they're stupid and fucking lazy. So they're not, that's the level of grammar use that they're going to use. So don't fucking trust them. And again, they might say that they're partisan or whatever, but like clearly, they're not partisan or whatever. There was a thing where like, hold on a second. There was a thing that I wanted to bring up as well, where they're like, we want to. Okay, as a movement that represents the Australian majority, Advance has the power to put your voice in front so you're heard. It then influences policy, removes that control. So we see our nation centered again on the freedom of mainstream values. Okay, that's not it. There was a thing where they're like, we have an issue with the political extremism on both sides, right? That's said somewhere here in their campaigns or in their about page or whatever. And then they have a thing. Okay, here, Jesus Christ, sorry. Putting it boldly. Extremism on both sides is a grave threat to our nation and our legacy. Right? And then right down here where you actually donate, they say, fund the fight today by bringing your voice and values front and center because it's time to restore the balance and stop the radical left. So much for the both sides. When it comes down to donate, it's just about the radical left.
Radical left.
So,
and I mean, this is an argument.
like, they couldn't even make it halfway
itself.
through the page before the mask fucking slips off.
Yeah. And that's the problem these days. Like, well, see, and this is quite interesting though, Tommy. Like, I honestly think that if you are this sort of lobbying group, it's actually to your advantage to stick to one side of the political spectrum. So if you are, you know, you're anti-progressivism, you're anti-leftism, then all you need to do is be upfront and say that. And you're probably going to find that you're going to get more political donations by saying, like, we are against both sides of extreme politics. Don't curb your donors. You know, their donors are going to be right-leaning, far right-leaning people. So just embrace who and what you are. Trying to stay middle of the ground to seem reasonable is not going to get them the donations that they want. It's actually counterproductive. They might as well just be very upfront with who and what they are. So yeah, it's kind of fascinating that they feel that they even need to do that.
Well, I think it's part of it because they're so tied into the Liberal Party that they have to front as somewhat centrist. Because the Liberal Party are like that. Like, we're the reasonable, like, we're the safe, reasonable hands. Therefore, they like, people that talk on their behalf, like these guys, can't be radical. They can't be the libertarians, right? They can't just be that out there, or else they'll lose the tiny share of power that they still have. So I think that's why these guys have to present themselves this way, even though it doesn't get them that much funding. But, you know, they get in between the last election and now, they've received, these guys have received millions of dollars, but a lot of people like at Crikey have referred to these guys as basically an AstroTurf organization, which, I mean, is, I think, pretty evident given the use of, like, these fucking stock photos and all that stuff. Like, they're clearly not these guys who are, like, these guys are grassroots. You can tell. These guys, not so much.
Yep, absolutely.
So anyway, that was what I want to talk about in terms of the local election. I thought it was pretty interesting how the race is going for the Senate here. I think everything else is not really that worthy of talking about. But Matthew, we're gonna have to go over Scott Morrison at a press conference. I know this is going to be painful, but I'm gonna ignore all of the Scott Morrison stuff. We're just going to focus on how the media is asking questions to these politicians, okay? So I think this is the first one of three that I have for Morrison.
Anthony Albanese has accused you of trying to dictate when these debates are...
Okay, shit. This is... okay, hold on.
We're going a little bit quick there. But yeah, this is our series into media shitbaggery.
Yeah, okay. There's a natural escalation. I jumped ahead in terms of the timeline, but this is the first one, so we're going to go with this one.
So, you've been campaigning on what you have done over the last 3 years, on the pandemic, on economic management, on national security. But if you are re-elected, what will you do? What is your vision for Australia over the next 3 years? Well,
okay, so like I did this in 1.5 times speed just cause. But basically, the guy was asking a politician who's campaigning, what is your vision for Australia in the future? Can you imagine a softer softball than that?
Yep, it's pretty soft.
Like, it's... Well, we'll contrast this later, but I just wanted to bring that out as a thing that he's here to talk about. He's in Tasmania, probably talking about like logging or something. Like, he would have come here to talk about something, and someone's just given him this window of like 2 minutes to just say whatever the fuck he wants. Okay, that's what's going on there.
And it's a very easy question to answer. You know, what do you envision of the Australia of the future?
Yeah, you can be as vague as you want.
Asking me that question. I think, you know, it's a great question to ask. I think Australia's future is strong. I think we're going to see more trades and services here. We're looking at an incredibly strong and dynamic economy, which has been brought to you by my government, by the Liberal government, and we will continue to bring you a strong economy into the future. That's what I see. That's what I envision for Australia. Safer borders, strong economy, great future. that's how you answer that question. It's an extraordinarily easy question to answer and a ridiculous question of anyone claiming to be a journalist to ask.
Yeah, remember, the job of the people who are asking these questions is to hold these people to account. That was not that. Here is the second question that was asked, I think almost directly after that one.
So the commander of Operation Sovereign Borders has released a video warning that Australia's borders are closed to people smugglers. What do you believe prompted the video? And do you agree with Peter Dutton's comments that people smuggling could restart because of conflicted election messaging around boat arrivals?
Okay, so the question is around, in a way, asking about his failure of government in terms of like the Solomon Islands. But the way it's framed is around, hey, do you think that the division in rhetoric, obviously between you and the Labour Party, like the mask is still on, right? The bias has not been like completely revealed yet, but it's basically allows Scott Morrison to talk about how Labour is different from the Liberal Party when they're actually not. And he'll go on for like 5 minutes to talk about how, oh yeah, these guys still want permanent protection visas and all this other kind of shit. And it's like, fuck, Labour have talked about how their policies on boats and shit are exactly the fucking same. So the fact that the journalist brought this up in the manner in which they've brought it up is another softball for him to basically just spruik his anti-Labour bullshit.
Yep. And it's also disingenuous when both parties have exactly the same policies concerning illegal boat arrivals.
Yeah. Like, they could have talked about, like, how much funding they could have given to the Solomon Islands, or like, why did the Solomon Islands funding go down? Like, specifically Solomon Islands. Whenever Scott Morrison talks about funding for the Pacific, he's always talking about the Pacific more broadly. He's never talking about how much specifically the Solomon Islands get, because that figure has been reduced. And this is the question that absolutely floored me. I had to fucking walk away.
Anthony Albanese has accused you of trying to dictate when these debates are going to happen. What's your response to that? And do you think that he's trying to walk away from going face-to-face with you?
Well,
how can you ask that question when Anthony Albanese fronted up to a debate organised by Sky News?
Okay, it's not like you're getting a little bit ahead of it, Matt, but it's like, it's not only that, right? The question, like, there is a legitimate line of attack that you can use against Scott Morrison here. But this journalist is straight up, like, it's not even a softball. This is a straight layup. Like, he's just giving Morrison a slam dunk. For what reason? Right? He's basically saying, hey, here's Anthony Albanese has criticized you. Here's 10 minutes so that you can just attack him, and I will give you the attack line. Like, that's a journalist giving Scott Morrison the attack line. Like, there's no reason for you to ask the question in that way. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. Like,
I know this is one of those things that makes you quite angry. And look, understandably,
well, like,
so.
I haven't seen it this blatant before. Like, again, the second question is within expectation. The ones that we showed, where it's just like, it's both sidesy and it has room for interpretation. But this is blatant partisanship on the media. They say
going to happen. What's your response to that? And do you think that he's trying to walk away from?
Do you think he's trying to walk away? They're legitimately just framing the Labour Party, the Labour leader, as bad here. Why? You're here to ask this motherfucker questions. There are people on the other side asking that motherfucker questions, okay, that are grilling him on that. You do not need to do that here in front of this motherfucker. Right? That's why it's partisan. You're supposed to hold this guy to account. That's your fucking job. But why would you just allow him to attack the other guy for free?
Yep.
That's not how this works.
I mean, we know why they're doing it the way they're doing it. Like, there is an alignment at the moment currently between Nine News, which is, run by Peter Costello. There's an alignment with Sky News, run by Rupert Murdoch. All News Corp press is aligned towards them. And unfortunately, in this country, the voices that used to be there, the independent voices, the ABC, have all been either removed out of the question, or they've been, infiltrated and defunded, especially when it comes to the ABC, to the point now where, you are not going to get a bipartisan media spread. It's just not going to happen. And it's been particularly evident this time around, and I'm not going to disagree with you there, Tommy, at all, when you see that there is no positive Labor news out there from our mainstream organizations.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's just do a direct comparison. The same goddamn day, this is what Jim Chalmers, like, this was like Anthony Albanese had like just gotten out of quarantine, and these are the kinds of questions that he gets asked. Okay.
Well, first of all, Anthony Albanese is returning to the fray today, and we're very pleased that our captain will be back on the field with us. And consistent with Dr.
We can just sort of watch this because I want to get
coming
like
back,
the
making
sense
sure that
of
he
how
can
this
do
thing
enough
goes
on the first day back, and then we're heading out to the great state of Western Australia after that.
The media in
And
an official capacity on his first day out of isolation.
Anthony has fronted the media this morning. He's done a number of
left
interviews.
off the list, so there are still plenty of people that he's not talking to, plenty of journalists who aren't able to ask questions of Anthony today.
Well, the campaign's still got 3 weeks to run. Anthony Albanese's done a heap of interviews this morning, and he'll have a heap of engagements out west as well, consistent with the health advice.
Contrast though with the Prime Minister. Isn't that a contrast with the Prime Minister, however, who did come out of isolation and held a press conference when he came out of isolation?
I'll tell you the contrast with the Prime Minister.
See, when it's Labor being asked questions, it's like, hey, Labor, why are you bad? And when it's Scott Morrison getting asked a question, it's like, oh, Scott Morrison, why is Labor bad?
Yep.
Like, is it not completely fucking obvious how skewed the media is in this fucking country?
Anthony Albanese, he shows up, he takes responsibility, he works hard every day to bring people together, and he acknowledges and has a plan for the cost of living crisis that has emerged on Scott Morrison's shoulders. Go to Sugar and then over here.
If he could do those breakfast interviews this morning, why couldn't he come to an official press conference?
Well, he'll have a number of media engagements over the coming days. Sugar.
There's reports that Tanya Plibersek.
Sorry, can you stay?
There's reports Tanya Plibersek is holding her own campaign launch on Sunday for a united team, as we've been hearing all week. Why haven't you got the full front bench at the National Labor launch in Perth on Sunday?
Yeah, just get literally every member of the fucking Labor Party into this one campaign launch. Okay.
Yep.
Who the fuck cares? Again, these guys are meant to be these journalists are meant to be asking these guys questions based on your interests. What concerns most people the most are like climate change, cost of living, all that kind of shit. And here they are, and they're going to continue to do this for the rest of this fucking press conference, ask about where Tanya Plibersek is. Who the fuck gives a shit where she is at this point in time? Like, it's extraordinary to me.
Tanya's been doing a heap of media and making a huge contribution to our campaign and making a big difference. The launch on Sunday in Western Australia will have some of us there, but not all of us there, and that's appropriate. I've answered your question, Julia Nua. Or, yeah.
Mr. Chalmers, both yourself, Mr. Albanese and Christina Keneally have accused the Prime Minister of going missing, of saying that he's avoiding scrutiny. You said these words just a moment or so ago yourself, sir. But your leader, despite having said he would debate the Prime Minister every day...
Okay, that's where we farewell viewers on some ABC channels. If you want to continue watching this live, you can do so on the ABC News channel.
Well, Anthony Albanese is not reluctant to debate the Prime Minister, and the last time they had a debate, Albo cleaned him up. And so, if you just let me finish my answer.
Line.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Like, this is the thing, like, Labor are really good during this kind of stuff. They get these lines across, they get these really good, like, punchy lines in. But the media just don't, like...
And it is a real shame too.
Yeah.
Like, it's a real shame this time around, especially because the Labor Party, as opposed to the last time they did this, under Bill Shorten, this Labor Party presents itself as clean, efficient, tidy, and tight.
Yeah,
and
well, if they
all
weren't,
on the same messaging, they're all on the same team, and it's a shame that they don't get the coverage that they deserve.
Yeah, if they weren't, the media would be ripping them to shreds. Like, you saw what happened for that one gaffe that basically meant fucking nothing. If there was any dirt on any of these fucking politicians, the media would be fucking screaming it at you on a daily basis, right? And the other thing is, like, the thing about this debate stuff is it went on Sky News for a fucking debate, right? And then we come out and we hear, oh, Scott Morrison has planned these debates on Channel 7 and Channel 9, okay? And rightfully, I think, the Labor Party are like, yo, what the fuck? Where's, like, one on the ABC? Where's the one at the National Press Club where this shit is normally held? Like, why are you doing it in these other specific places? Especially, like the ABC especially has, like, much more validity to having a debate there because the ABC reaches the regions. So if you actually want the messaging and the debating to reach all of the people, you want it to be on the ABC. But Scott Morrison doesn't want that. He just wants it on these fucking places where he controls the narrative and controls the crowd in a way. Like Channel 9 is going to be partisan as fuck. Like that's just we see from the journalists asking these questions. It's mostly coming from the ones that are asking legitimate questions are probably from the ABC. Like there's one or two of them in there, but like everyone else is from one of those other for-profit media institutions. So yeah, like we probably don't need to like run that. I've recorded the whole thing. We can run it, but like there's like a couple more times when they ask about where Tanya Plibersek is, and it's like, really, guys, like Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, we're running short on time, so
we are
and I'm somewhat surprised. I'm still so angry about this, but oh my god, it is infuriating. But let's look at the fucking polls, Matt. They are stagnant.
Yeah, they have been, which is quite interesting to see. When we look at polling data, it has been relatively the same. It keeps the Labor Party in that 3 percentage point lead. It hasn't really swung either way. Early voting has already started. So myself and my partner Holly, we've both filled out our postal votes and already sent them off. If it helps anyone feel a bit better, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I have preference Labor on my voting forms because I want Labor to have a decisive victory. I think their team is strong. I think they are going to bring the changes that we need. So that's who I voted for. So we're seeing that they've maintained this consistent lead over the Liberal Party for 3 weeks of the election, and nothing has happened to change that. Are we going to see a Liberal bloodbath? I think there is the potential that we will.
Yeah, just real quick, what's Roy Morgan got? Apparently they've closed the gap ever so slightly, maybe. Yeah, by 0.5% in the two-party preferred. But I mean, that's pretty meaningless, I think. What do they talk? I don't think they attribute it to much. But yeah, anyway. It's I mean, effectively stagnant across from last week.
Yeah, I mean, look, the meter is not going to change, Tommy, until either party. Well, we know what like when it comes to the Labor Party, what they're trying to do. They want to improve the conditions of people in nursing homes. They want to bring in an they want to bring in a federal corruption body, a federal ICAC. We know that they want to introduce free TAFE programs for people. We know that they want to spend more money on education, healthcare. These are the big platforms. They've been talking about them consistently. So I don't think there's going to be a huge announcement coming from Labor that's going to sway voters one way or the other. The Liberal Party, they're not announcing anything, right? Their messaging is, we are going to be the consistent government that you've seen for the last 9 years in this country. So that's their platform. So unless either party announces some sort of major benefit, or they announce some sort of major scheme that they're working on, or some sort of infrastructure project, something along those lines, I don't think you're going to see those numbers move whatsoever right up until election day.
Yeah, Labor are doing a campaign launch tomorrow in Perth. So it seemed like from one of the, like, I was just watching it just before a press conference with a bunch of those guys. There was Chalmers, Albo was there, Katie Gallagher was there as well. There's going to be some announcements relating to Medicare and the pharmaceutical benefit scheme, I think, because Morrison has just announced, they're like reducing some of these things by $10, which and like this might be, you might consider this to be just a a Labor Party line, but I don't fucking trust him to do that, because
no,
he He'll say anything to get re-elected and then just fucking not do anything.
You know, they have been taking the proverbial axe to Medicare. So yeah, they can announce all the reductions they like. It's not going to be the truth, and they're not going to fulfill those promises. Another thing they did this week, they dropped $250 in the hands of people on the pension, people on social welfare. Again, that didn't really change the degree. All it really did was piss off mainstream voters who don't get to see that $250 in their bank account.
Yeah. Okay, so something that's very that's been annoying me a lot is this idea, and Stuart fucking Robert got clapped for this, like applauded, I should say, for this line at on Q&A, and he was basically saying that the cost of living measures, there's nothing you can really do about the war in Ukraine, so there's nothing we can really do about cost of living. And it really annoys me that people seem to believe this line. I was in an afternoon briefings live stream, which is a show on the ABC that recaps like the day in politics and shit like that. And there was a poll on there that says, hey, do you think Australia, the government could have done could do more about cost of living, right? And 70% of the people voted for that option. And, you know, one of the other options was like, no, they have no control over cost of living, right? And one of the commenters on there who was live chatting was like, oh, well, it's clear by the poll that 70% of the people here are ALP voters. And I'm like, so it's ALP voters for you to think that governments should do their fucking jobs?
Yeah.
Because cost of living is not, okay, so it's indicative of the government in general, right? But basically, if cost of living is an issue, and there's a lot of cost of living things that are controlled by the government, okay? Sure, we can't do anything about what's going on in Ukraine that's bringing up coal prices. But you know what we could have done? Transitioned into green renewable energy faster. And then we wouldn't be reliant on fucking coal. And so the price shocks that happen throughout the rest of the world wouldn't have fucking affected us, right? But they didn't fucking do that, right? You know what else you can do? Rent is a huge part of cost of living, okay? And housing affordability. The house prices have gone up, which increases rents, does all that other kind of shit too. And first home buyers. And the more they cost, the more you have to borrow in order to buy your first home, all that other kind of shit, right? You know what you can do as a government to address that? You fucking build more houses. But this government doesn't want to do that. And part of that, I think, is inbuilt into Liberal Party and like rich people's agenda. They don't want house prices to go down because they all own fucking property. There is no incentive for them to build houses to make them cheaper on the whole for people because that makes their house value go down. Yep. Right? And rich people just want all of their shit to go up. So why would they do that?
What's crazy about the housing crisis as well as we move into it, they have flagged that the cash rate will be increased. They've said that interest rates are going up this year. When that happens, there will be a financial bloodbath in this country, and we're going to end up with a massive homeless population overnight. It is going to happen so fucking quick. And all of these people that have been spruiking these schemes, you know, negative gearing, for example, which, you know, the Shorten government, where like when he was trying to come into power, the Shorten party, when he was leading the Labor Party, wanted to remove those programs, wanted to remove those safeguards where you could just borrow and borrow and borrow and borrow and buy multiple houses at a tiny interest rate. There are going to be homeless people this year. That's Liberal Party policy.
I mean, homelessness is not something that they give a shit about anyway. But I mean, like, there's the public housing list, the list that you go on if you need public housing assistance and stuff like that. That's ballooned. Like the wait times for that is like probably like close to a year or more or something now. Or 4 years or something. It's fucking ridiculous, right? And that's ballooned because they don't give a shit about that. They don't give a shit about giving housing to people. So that's always going to be a problem under Liberal national governments. Yeah, but like it's not just that. Like there's plenty of things like directly that Labor can do, that a government can do that Labor are spruiking. Like, hey, we want to like make childcare cheaper, and the questions that they get constantly is just like, oh yeah, how much exactly are people going to save if you get put into power? Give us the dollar figure. And I'm like, what the fuck are you guys asking? Everybody's going to like save a different amount of money.
Yeah.
But they're fixated on like on specifically like targeting labor on these fucking issues where obviously there isn't going to be a concrete answer, but they're not going to ask or grill Morrison on the same fucking shit. It's just fucking, God, it's frustrating, dude.
Yeah, it's extraordinarily frustrating. At the moment, there is the money and the power is in conservatism. It's in conservative media, and that's why we're seeing this bias. That is why, like, I honestly believe that when it comes to media in this country, it needs to be better regulated. But you know, that's a discussion whenever that's brought up. The free speech issue gets brought up right next to it, and then that kills the conversation.
If all of these Climate 200 guys get in and they form a government, and if they do it with the LNP, it's basically game over. But if they do it, and they should, based on their fucking principles, they should form a government with Labour. And if they do that, there might be enough of a push, because I think they would understand how biased the media is. For them to just go in there and be like, you know what, media reform happening now. Let's go. Royal Commission into that shit or whatever.
And there needs to be,
because
I mean, look, we're two amateurs playing at politics right now, and we've been, you know, just really keeping our eyes on this stuff for the last 3 weeks proper. And if we can see it, and we're Tommy's got a degree in IT, I have trade certificates, you know, we're not super geniuses, we're not professionals. If we can see it, then there's a problem.
Yeah. The thing is, like, we go through the extra, well, at least I do. I go through the extra mile of just like watching all of those press conferences, and you just like, oh yeah, this is fucked up, right? But those get cut up, and you just get like the sound bites of like what the politician, I guess, means to say or whatever. You don't actually get to see much of the journalists asking those questions. I think there should be a camera on the people asking those questions, and then they can be held accountable for like that bullshit. Like on Twitter, that whoever asked that question of Scott Morrison would have fucking got grilled for it if they were actually on camera and that we knew who that was. But there isn't that level of transparency there, which I think is bad.
They get to protect themselves and hide. We will have to wrap it up there, which is, I mean, it kind of works out, I guess, Tommy, because it has been a rather slow news week with basically the election campaign grinding to a halt with Albanese having to ISO. But I guess I better spruik some stuff before I head off.
Yeah, go for it.
Mostly. In July, we are going to be appearing at GammaCon for Weird Crap in Australia. We'll be there for the whole weekend. Looking forward to meeting people. We're going to be doing 2 live shows and signings throughout the day. So just come up and have a chat. You can find me on the social medias. We are Weird Crap in Australia on Facebook and Instagram, and our handle on Twitter. For as long as Twitter remains as it is, we don't know what's going on there, but we're going to stick it out and see what happens. So our handle there is Weird Crap in Oz, AUS. You can find us there. Once a week, we release a new podcast, Weird Crap in Australia, where we look at all the sort of fun adventures going on throughout history in this country. We've covered everything from aliens to serial killers, right up to pop culture as well. We've covered the Wiggles, Crocodile Dundee, and recently we just covered Play School. There'll be an episode coming up very soon. So all sorts of Australian history is covered on the Weird Crap in Australia podcast, hosted by me and the researcher extraordinaire herself, Holly Soul. And I've got a book coming out in September, Weird Crap in Australia Volume 3. I got a lot of stuff going on, Tommy.
Yeah, doing a lot of stuff. It's good. Cool. I got nothing going on. So
nothing this week. Go check out his video from last week. Go check out Tommy's YouTube channel. It's awesome. He just deconstructs all this video game stuff. If you're keen on that, go check that out. Again, people who really love video game shit tell me it's good, and I trust their opinion. So go check that out.
I mean, look, there's only one person that you know that's Lindsay.
And Blake.
But yeah, like, look, it's okay. Like the thing about my content is it's like they're video essays, but there's absolutely no shilling in it. So look, you can look forward to that.
Yep.
I don't
Go
even
check it
ask
out.
in the videos to like and subscribe because feels wrong, dude. Anyway, that's us for this
It
week.
does.
We'll see you next time. Hopefully, well, I mean, I think it's always going to be interesting. There's always going to be something for us to pull up and look at. We've had a taste of candidate, a look into like the candidates and an actual seat, and that's going to occur. So I think we can probably do that more. I'll do. There's a really cool site that you can look at the voting records of politicians that like are in Hansard, so you can get a look at like what their values are in terms of what they voted for. So yeah, when we look at candidates, we're probably going to go over that a little bit more as well if we do that. So yeah, that's is this week 3? I wrote week 3 last time for the previous time. I think this is actually the end of week 3. So yeah, we'll see you for week 4 of the election. Stay safe out there, everybody. Keep yourself sane in this fucking dog shit media environment. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week, folks.